The cool thing about a podcast is, or this podcast anyway, I know that if you're watching this video, then you are 100% the person that I want to be speaking to for this. It is relevant to you. You are a business owner or you are looking at growing a business and you want to fast track your results. Now, at some stage, whether you've hit this obstacle yet or perhaps you haven't, but trust me, you will, you're going to need to replace yourself from certain areas in your business. And in order to do that properly, you need to have process in place. Guys, this podcast is brought to you by the amazing Al Levy and his incredible operating manuals program. He's put together a unique offer where you save like $1,000 or something on this incredible program. And guys, I can't stress enough how much this is going to fast track your result. There's testimonial after testimonial after testimonial of people that have been through this program that have got incredible results. And guys, I tell you, it will save you and make you thousands and thousands and thousands. It really is incredible. So if you're watching this right now, the link is just below, but if you're listening to it, it's really simple. Tradie.wiki/7power for the 7Power contractor. Tradie.wiki, WIKI/7power. So if you're driving, pull over and search it right now. Save it in your phone, whatever it is. This link, guys, is going to be available in the show notes. So if you're unsure, if you forget it, head across to thesiteshed.com, find this episode, and you'll see the link in there. But guys, I can tell you right now, this is an amazing program, and it's a unique, special offer that he's put together just for us site shedders. So go and get your hands on it. You will not regret it. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Uncle Al, welcome back to the Site Shed podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me back. Appreciate it.
Good to have you. Always a good conversation. Most requested guest. We're here to talk about goal setting. So, time of recording this, it is the middle of February 2021. I'm guessing it'll probably go live in March or something like that. But yeah, I mean, goal setting is a topic that I haven't covered in a long time, but I've been wanting to. I've read your recent article. The goal writing was on the wall and it was brilliant. So I thought I'd get you on the show to talk a little bit more to that, because I know you're a wealth of knowledge. I know my experience with goal setting in the past has been of mixed reports, largely tying to the fact that I never really understood the strategy behind a goal, in which, you know, that old saying, a goal without a strategy is a wish. I've been pretty good at making wishes over the years, but I've only recently started to learn the power of goal setting and actually sticking to a strategy to help you get there. So I know this is like your bread and butter and you're the strategy man. So I think this is going to be really interesting. And for all the guys out there that have not heard Al before, he's been on the show a number of times. I'll put some links in the show notes to all of the previous episodes we've done. But Al's going to give us a bit of a background as to the 7Power contractor and give us a little bit of a spiel about this awesome program you've got with your operating manuals, which, guys, again, you'll be able to get hold of that. Al's even giving you guys as SiteShed listeners a discount with that. You'll get it through, there's a link in the show notes, so go and get it. It is awesome.
Thanks. I appreciate it. We always talk about the 7 powers. So if you haven't heard my episode, shame on you. And if you haven't read the book, I'm really disappointed. If you haven't listened to the book, I'm really disappointed, because one of the number one supporters of this book, audio, everything else, is Matt.
Yeah.
Because it was written to be really, really small. Mm-hmm. When I was working with my editor, who knows, Selena, is I said, I have all these great, I've been writing for years and years. I got 250 columns. She goes, well, what do you want from me? And I said, I got 250 of my kids in the audience saying, pick me. It'll end up being like a ransom note. And I said, you got to help organize. And she helped me organize on what my strategy is: 7 powers: planning, operations, staffing, sales coaching, marketing, and financial. The great news for me, Ellen Rohr, who's a fan of the show and been on the show, really helps on the financial and, the sales coaching end of it, which is how do you get rewards for getting people to sell?
Yeah.
And we put our programs together to create that, and it's really, really good. So just a little quick story here is basically when I showed up at the business. Now, my business was started in 1936. I was third generation. good news for our business is because we learned how to become systematic. My middle brother is still there with my nephew, who is now the fourth generation. And you think about how many companies that make it to the fourth generation and thrive, which they are.
Yeah.
And that takes systems.
Sure.
So, but we were not born that way. we struggled every day. And it was putting out the same fire that we thought we had controlled yesterday, the next day. So the idea about planning or goal setting, you got to be kidding. I'm trying to get this job today done. What do you mean? Sit down, let's have a goal meeting. No. So when I worked, these last 18 years, Matt, traveling all over the country and Canada and such, doing one-to-one, I would come in and the very first thing is I would get them to, a plan and operations, have a thought, how to get it organized, which you've heard me talk about, master project, top 30, top 5. And we'll come back to that at the end because that's really a key. When you finish listening to this, you got to really hang on to that. Let's put that aside for a minute. But so I run through that. I run through operation manuals, staffing, which is, of course, is the biggest complaint of anyone and everywhere. And it's not just the tech, every position, learning how to do all these things in sales. And then only then, Matt, do I swing back to what I call leadership training. And it's all about goal setting. And it's all about learning the bad habits you have, even your bad thoughts. And I spend, 2 days on this with them. And everyone says, we love this. This is great. Why didn't we start with this? And I said, because when I showed up, you were drowning in a pool. That was not the time to teach you how to swim.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
I know it's a funny thing, Al. I don't mean to interrupt, but I know, like, we've had this experience with coaching clients in the past with another business I'm associated with, and we found that if they don't have some mindset training before they go into the program, they inevitably just drop out because they're not mentally ready and equipped to go through the processes, and actually execute.
I hear what you're saying. There is no bad time
right
to do what you just said. And I agree with you. And I kind of gave it short shrift. Now, in planning, I am starting to begin to take control of that.
Right.
But not as deep as I need to be because I really got to work out everybody's great idea and really get away from ideas to ideas that get implemented.
Yeah.
Because every time you read a book, every time you listen to a book, every time you go listen to a podcast, every time you search online, every time you're in a Facebook group, you're going to get a lot of good information, but you're also going to get a lot of stupid information. Now, how would you know? And so until you're really set up, you really can't absorb information in the right way, which is, again, back to the 7 powers is where does that fit in here, if you will? And what is the priority to every great idea? So you have to kind of set that aside. Mm-hmm. So I do give them some goal training. Some of my biggest things, really is when there are 2 owners, typically, but not all. There's this great visionary, and they can see where this company can be in the next 3 to 5 years, have this real drive to become that. And they have really no idea about how the steps go to get there. Sure. And their other partner is like what I just described earlier, which is, you know what? I'm just going to get the steps cranked out today. I'm going to get today handled. I'm going to get tomorrow handled. And they're going like this. Here's the problem. The guy who's got the vision is over here. And the guy that has the steps, he's walking in the other direction.
Sure.
So my job is to agree to a goal, where we want to be, and then break it up to the steps so they're walking together in the same destination. Visionaries driving to that, and the other implementer, if you will, which is the Gino Wickman way he calls it, is somebody that's knocking out the steps at the same time. Now, you can be both, the inspired person and also the implementer, as I was. It's not like that talent you can't develop or you don't have within you. It depends on your organization.
You say that, but I remember listening when we did a previous podcast and you were talking about basically what you just said then, how there was yourself, your father, your 2 brothers, and you were all
2 older brothers.
2 older brothers. And you were all going full steam ahead in your own directions, not sort of aligning to anything. So I think that's really common. And I love that potentially that paradigm around, making sure that everyone's working towards the same, like go full steam ahead, but go in the same direction, sort of.
Well, I think I shared a story, which is really was my dad. My dad grew up on a dairy farm. And so all of his logic was really about farming, which was very strange. So his boys had never seen what a farm was, right? And we were probably in our late 20s and had been in the business for a while. And my dad just, huddles up one day and says, boys, I've been thinking, if we all get on the same side of the car and push, we'll go a lot further. And he leaves. And I look at my brother Marty and my brother Richie, and we're kind of like, what? Oh, he wants us to get on the same side of the car. And so it was funny because then we said, okay, you know what? And this is kind of like, again, another birth of where the org chart came from.
Right.
Because we never had that. We never had an org chart. And so everybody was free to do everything or nothing. And what I always say is, unless it's somebody's job, and that's where the org chart comes in, either two people are doing it or no people are doing it. Both of that is a bad scenario.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So goal setting is something I really do want to talk about because it's so important.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be the tease here is, by a show of imaginary hands, how many of you made New Year's resolutions and now we're in February and wherever you hear this in March have already blown those babies out of the water because they never came to fruition? And I will tell you the number one reason is because you never put it to writing. You never held yourself accountable to look at it each and every day. And that is what me and Matt are unpacking here, is that if you don't put to writing what it is you want your company to be. So just let's put some numbers to this. Matt has a plumbing company, just as an example. It's $1 million a year in sales. And so he says, I want to be 10 million sales next year. I love big goals, by the way. I'm not a goal judge. I love big goals. So we have to make that clearer, though. What does that mean? 1 million, 10 million? Well, if you use a rule of thumb here in the US, every truck produces about $250,000 per year, just as a ballpark. That means I need 4 trucks rolling every day to get me that million. So if I want to go to 10 million and Matt wants to go to 10 million next year, he's going to have 40 trucks rolling every day, staying busy to hit that 10 million. Now that's an explosive growth curve. And Matt is good at marketing, or maybe acquires companies, or whatever the things you need to do. There's a whole bunch of projects and habits that have to go into place. But here's what happened. So when we finally got all of the waters calmed down at work, was the first time that we were able to look up and look ahead. So if you think about driving your car, and I always talk about if you're in New York and you want to end up in LA, in the old days, it would be nice to have a map. Well, today it would be nice to be using GPS and figure out the best route for doing that, right? Otherwise, you're just driving all over the place and no real direction. And so it breaks it up in pieces is how we get to that goal. But the better you describe it. So we're already on our path, right? 40 trucks. Here's, we're starting to talk about what each truck has to do. And we start to build a thing where this actually becomes a picture that you can see what this is going to look like. You might have multiple operations as an example. Now, all of this is really good. But here's the rub. So it really wasn't until I left my business that I finally was free to do my own goal setting. And I created my own 10 golden rules for my business that I was going to obey. Because again, I was born into my other business and, I was really just going along with the tide and we made some great strides, but I had now this opportunity about what did I want the 7-Power contractor to be? And I wrote these 10 golden rules, which are my goals.
They're goals or they're values?
They were my values, which led to my goals. Great point and great catch there, because these are my values. Doesn't matter if my goals are not in line with my 10 golden rules, there's going to be a problem.
Sure.
And the other thing that I just for some reason realized is that if I just did my company goals and I didn't do a side-by-side personal goals, they too would always be butting heads.
Sure.
So that's where I try to get people to do their 10 personal golden rules and their 10 business golden rules to get what you're talking about. What is their core values? Because that has to serve the goal you're going. So one of the things Matt wants to be 40 million next year, 10 million, and he's 1 million right now. My question is, Matt, what are you willing to give up? Will you give up surfing? Because I know Matt loves surfing. I think not. Matt, you're not going to go skiing? Are you not going to be around to watch your baby grow up? I mean, what are you willing to give up in this next year? There are some personal sacrifices. I am not saying that those things are not important, but how do you balance this out?
Yeah.
Because in the universe, we've only got 3 things: time, energy, and money. And believe it or not, money is not the biggest problem.
No.
And even time you can leverage with other people. The energy you have to devote, you only woke up this morning with so much energy. Where are you going to put it day after day to drive you to your goal? So the most important part here we're talking about is the goal needs to be clear in pictures, numbers, so that it really begins to start taking shape.
You know how you said before, this has been my problem in the past as well. You go through these goal creation exercises and you go and write them down, because if you don't write them down, they won't come true. Then you go stick them in a drawer and you don't look at them for 12 months and wonder why they didn't happen. So how do you encourage people to keep them front of mind, keep them present, the frequency at which to revisit them and all these kind of things? Because I think that's an issue that is the issue, I think, for a lot of people. It was for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I'll come back to a side note to that, but I will tell you the first thing is, yes, Matt is absolutely right. You know, where is the accountability? When you
Right.
stuck it in a drawer. So for me, and Ellen and I both teach the same thing, which is meetings are really key. So the meeting I have is called Meeting with Me. And every Sunday, and people use different days depending on what you like, I have an hour blocked out, Matt, where my goals are right on the top of that, recurring meeting.
Every
And then
Sunday you do this?
I do, my goals are right at the top of that meeting.
Huh.
And it's right there every week. I have to look at it. Every week I have to look at it, Matt. I don't care where I am. I never kill that appointment. I may have to move it, but it never leaves me. And every week I look at my goals to see where I am. And now I also have my top 5 projects, which again, we talked about quickly. Master project, top 30, top 5. Because I know those 5 projects, if I selected them, or habits, I like to make sure people know it's not always projects and habits. And one of the habits Matt just talked about is show up, be accountable, and attend your own meeting with me. So if you can't get that habit down, well, that should be one of your top projects, right? Yeah. So this is where people go astray. So I work with Alina doing a lot of this type stuff, but every week I have my goals and I have, what my project, where I even do like a 3-year goal. I don't believe in going much past 3 years.
Sure.
Not because I'm old, but even when I was younger, I didn't believe in doing it because it's too much iffy. It's just like wild guessing.
Yeah.
And so the secret sauce that I found, though, is so I know this was actually my yoga instructor. So credit to my yoga instructor telling me this 20 years ago is if you know what you want, if you know your goal, right? And you know every action step, but it seems to come or you can never reach it. And if you get there, you fall off the horse. And instant she said that while I was twisted up like a pretzel on a floor doing a yoga pose, I realized for 30 years of my life, I always battled my weight up and down the elevator, right?
Weight.
Gain weight, lost weight, gain weight, lost weight. Keep it. I actually kept it off for like 3 years one time, thinking, man, I got this. And I knew immediately what she was talking about because the next sentence out of her mouth was, if you know what your goals are and you know the action steps, but you can't get there or you can't stay there, you have to examine what you really, really believe. Mm. And immediately, as soon as that word left her mouth, I said to myself, I'm always going to be fat. So I was always, as my dad, the farmer, used to say, milking the cow. And on the way out, I was kicking over the milk. And that's the same thing that goes on with all of us is we may know what our goals are. And again, the better you define it, the more you spell it out, the more you make it like a picture, then you break it into small pieces of top projects and actions and steps. It's all on a great path. But if you do not examine what you truly believe in your heart of heart and get that fixed, you are always going to struggle. So one of the exercises I do in leadership is we do it together, all of us, top management, owner, and myself, because it's a great exercise for me. You take out a pad, clean sheet of paper, and the exercise is for the next 3 minutes, write down every negative message in your head and write fast. Do not censor anything at all. Write it all out. And you just see them head down and people are pouring this stuff out on the page because all of us grew up in an imperfect world. Mm-hmm. Our dad, our mom, friends, somebody gave us negative messages and we decided, you know what? They must be right. So we just take them in. And so they have this whole negative page and mine as well. And then I ask if they're okay with sharing, but I always start with my own. And the good news is, by the way, Matt, having done this for so many years, my list is getting shorter. Sure. Not because I censored it, just the action of putting it out there about what I really believe and getting that handled better has really helped me. Mm-hmm. So they have their, negative beliefs. And then I tell them, look at that, take out another clean sheet. And I want you to write the same thing, but in a positive statement. So one of the things people always say, well, there's nobody here to help me, right? Nobody's going to help me. So then they have to write it as there are plenty of people that are willing to help me if I let them help me. Right. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about in a positive statement. And I wrote again, for my case was about I'll always be fat. It says, I know how to control my weight. I know the steps and I'm in control of it. So we just go down the whole page doing that. And then again, I ask them if they'll share once I've shared some of mine. And it's amazing to see the weight lift off of people.
Literally, metaphorically? Yeah. Or
no, you can just see a cloud lifting. Sometimes you can see it. Have you ever heard the weight of the world is on my shoulders?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You look at people, literally, or a pain in my neck, or, the thing. whoever came up with that 1,000 years ago was dead on, because that's true. So anyway, so what we do next is with the negative ones, we hold on to the good ones. We just put it in a drawer because it's only for ourselves. So on the negative ones, we create an interesting way to do it. So we did it at Zoom Empire, where they were doing it virtually. They had to find a creative way to destroy it. So they put it out in the yard and drove a truck over it. One of them set it on fire. One of them flushed it down a toilet. One of them put it through a paper shredder. I mean, and one of them actually, because we do jetting, water jetting, hydraulic jetting, and they took out a hose, threw it through a pipe, and got it. It's great. But the image of you destroying these negative beliefs, which get in the way of you attaining your goals and exceeding your goals with those goals, is really at the core of this. So I know it's kind of like, I hope you're not going, that sounds kind of metaphysical for me, because I'm not that kind of guy. If you've ever met me, I'm really very practical, but I learned how powerful this is.
Yeah. And so, like, going back to the actual frequency at which you revisit the goals, like, what do you advise in that front? Like you said, every Sunday, do you have them pinned up in your office? Do you stick them in every room of the house? Like, you one of those, you know what I mean? Like, there's all these different.
I think, like, know thyself. Whatever you think you need to be confronted to it, and whatever medium you need to do, that is a difference between if we're putting company goals, then everybody gets the company goals.
Sure.
One of the things I love is the company-wide game, which is, so Matt next year, he's $1 million now. Next year, let's say, pick a more realistic, he wants to be $2 million. Mm-hmm. So $2 million a year, let's make it 2.4 just for easy math. He needs $200,000 a month. So he's already set the goal and he knows what he wants for gross profit. Everybody plays in the game. And if we hit 2 million, 2.4 million in gross profit target built into that thing, Matt has already created a spiff or a bonus for each team member that made it happen. Yeah. So every month we all come to a meeting and we see, did we hit that number? If great, let's celebrate, talk about what we did. If we missed, let's talk about why we missed, because the goal's not changing. It's still 2.4 million. This, instead of 200,000, this was 100,000. What are we going to do to make it up? Sure. Now, if we blew it away, what can we do now to, continue to repeat these good habits? So that's a case where the goal is clearly known by everyone in every way that it is. Also, I'm a big believer in top 5 whiteboards. Mm-hmm. So if you get your top 5, we talk about what it is that you need, why is it that you need it, and then the status of each. And there's 5 lines for the top 5. That one is visually accountable in a place that everyone at your company passes. And I will tell you why, because they're going to hold you accountable to what you put on that board. And if they never see anything come off that board and they never see any status improvement, they already know, same as always. And that's why it's so powerful to have that visual thing up. And
this is kind of where I wanted to really dive a bit deeper into, is the accountability. So not just been, like, so back in 2019, 2020, like moving into 2020, I did a post in my group and I said, hey, let's talk about some goals for the upcoming year, not knowing, of course, that, COVID was going to throw spatters in the works. But, and I put some goals down of myself. And I said, my goals for this year are, I want to double the business turnover. I want to double my team. I wanted to get race competition fit. I think they were the top 3. Now, two of those goals are pretty clearly defined and have, like, numerical values are tied to them. Yep. Double the business revenue, we did it. Double the team, we did it. Get competition fit, what the hell does that mean?
And no, it's funny, when you said that, I was thinking to myself, did you say how many miles you're going to run a day, or how many laps you're going to swim, or any of the other kinds of things? Because the other ones I could see, the first 2, it's very funny. That's exactly what I was picking up.
So there's a lot of, and obviously that was the only one that didn't happen, because it didn't, I was certainly lawn bowls fit. I could have competed in lawn bowls, no problem. I could have competed,
Well, I think you compete in surfing, but it's a little different.
If you see me surf, if you see me surf, you would not be saying that.
Okay.
But anyway, the point being is that it wasn't specific enough, and you hear about these
what are you willing goals. And also, what are you willing to give up to attain that goal? Sure. So that's where we started before, right? Because it may be some time where you're not with your baby. It may be some time where you're doing me time. And by the way, that's okay in my book. Oh, totally. There has to be some me time. Yeah. And that sounds like, well, sure that is, but it's not true, because most of us, especially in the contract industry, we are givers. Now, I think people out there think we're takers, but we're not. We're givers. If we would take, we'd just be in the drug business. Right. It's a different kind of thing here. We're here to serve people. But sometimes we forget about serving ourselves, Matt.
And it ties into what you're saying, about there being a balance, and there's got to be a balance, because if you go all in on business and you'll end up losing your wife and your kids. So
yes.
And so anyway, this year, I sort of approached it a little bit different, and through chance, I stumbled across essentially a mental toughness program. It's called 75 Hard. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a guy out of the United States, Andy Frisella. And a colleague of mine, he's not even really a friend, like he's becoming a friend now since we've been doing this together. But he posted on Instagram, I'm doing this thing, and I was like, that looks great. And essentially, it's these lists of daily accountability things that you have to do, and they're not easy. I'll tell you, you've got to train twice for 45 minutes a day. You've got to drink a gallon of water. You've got to read 10 pages of a business book. You've got to do a whole bunch of things, right? Every day you've got to do this for 75 days. And surprisingly, you're accountable to yourself and the app. Like there's no one else really driving you. Like you do it. And apparently I read his book. Apparently a lot of people don't do it, which doesn't surprise me. A lot of people drop out. But, like after 43 days or something into this program, it really does teach you, like it really does give you a lot of belief about, being accountable to yourself. And, if you can just follow these steps, you can really start seeing results. And within 40 days, you can see some pretty amazing, results, both up here and, and physically, if that's what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And, it kind of speaks to most of the programs. I forgot who was the one that said it, but it takes 21 days to ingrain a habit.
Yeah, and I don't know how true that is. I feel like I've tried a lot of things for 21 days and not carried through them. But I certainly think after 43 odd days, and I'm obviously got like 30 something odd left to go. But which, by the way, you're not allowed to drink alcohol. By the way, no cheat meals, and you've got to follow a diet. They're the other things. And I mean, I'm not a huge drinker anyway, but I do like the odd beer here or there on a Friday afternoon, and so I haven't had a beer.
You and I had a beer, so I can attest to what he's saying.
Yeah, we did exactly, and I haven't had a drink since the beginning of January, and ironically, and my birthday's coming up in March, and which is a big one. It's got a 0 at the end of it, and and this program is running through it, so I'll be dry through that as well. Which is, and I think to myself, a lot of people would just go, you know what, I'll just chuck it in there and have a beer. But I think you've got to really stick to your guns, and you've got to through doing this program, like the mental aspect of it and the mental rewards of sticking and being accountable to your goals are really empowering. And I think they kind of help you eradicate excuses. And so I'd love to hear what your take is on, like from a mindset point of view, the powers that come from like believing in yourself and knowing that if you do set goals and you do work towards them and you take small steps, like the power that sort of gives to the person is quite impressive. I think things into perspective, where, like you said before, I want to hit 10 million. Okay, great. You're going to hit 10 million. You call that a goal if you want, but it's not really a goal until you can break that down into actions.
Yeah, you have to describe the heck.
Like, what does that what does that look like on a micro? Right. Like macro, sure, 10 million, but micro, what does that mean every day you've got to do? Like you said, baby, what does that mean you've got to give up?
How many incoming calls? What's your conversion rate? I could go on for a while there. You can see that, you could just say 10 million and go, that was a nice conversation. It's not the steps it's not the KPIs, which everybody talks about, performance indicators.
Sure.
But, as soon as you put 10 million in, I'm already cranking out about how many steps, how many calls, how many qualified calls. And what we talked about marketing way back when is it's always about the right amount of calls from the right customer, right time.
Exactly.
Because otherwise, I really don't want to hear it. That's really what it comes down to. It. Now, of course, about the right amount of calls is going to be different for 1 million versus 10 million a year in sales is a pretty good indicator.
So how does that look then? If you say, okay, I've got the 3-year goal and I want to hit 10 million, like what's your framework and what do you teach, your tribe?
So so when we're doing planning power, which is the first step, one of the things we're doing here is we've kind of got an idea about where this business is today and where you want to go tomorrow. We don't get deep into the other stuff we're talking about because we have to be practical.
Sure.
Your warehouse is out of control. Your offices, people are sitting in the wrong place. There is no org chart. There are no manuals. There is no training going on of people who are there and finding their holes and fixing it. Everyone that new you hire, you just take them at their word. You find out how bad they are. And then ultimately, if you haven't done it right, but you have not invested in building people from scratch the right way instead of always rewiring. And it's not just text. I'm talking about everyone at your company has an effect on profitability as an example. And so these become the projects and habits that litter this master project list, which can be typically it's around 100 to 150 projects and habits. And why I keep saying habits is steps of corrective action was a problem. Is, Matt, you screwed up. Matt, you screwed up. Matt, you screwed up. I never said anything. And all of a sudden, one day, Matt walks in and I go, F you, Matt, you're out of here. Well, there's nothing in the file, right? There's nothing. And it's not even fair to you because you didn't know. I thought I was doing great. Wait a second. What happened here? So we had to create the steps of corrective action. First step, is a discussion, look at the manuals, talk about it. And then just sign here. And if nothing comes up, we'll rip up the note, go away in 6 months, or you can do it electronically. Next time you're back and we're having a discussion, it's going to be a formal write-up. Third time, it's suspended for 2 days. Go home and think about what you want to be and where you want to go. And then the last one is dismissal. And when we finally put this in at our company, the guys who are at the company, in particular, the shop supervisor who was there to protect the other people, came to me one day and said, we don't fire anybody anymore. And I said, what do you mean by that, Rick? And he goes, we give them 4 chances. Now, if they lie, cheat, or steal, there's no 4 chances.
Right.
If you lie, cheat, or steal, you're gone.
Yeah.
And I tell that on day one, because you're orienting with me about how we do this thing, how we behave. And so, it's very objective. Every one of them, because of the manuals, know how they're supposed to get dressed. It's not my opinion.
Right.
It's just that way. And we'll take a picture of you. So when you show up, you know what you're supposed to look like when you're dressed right. Because I'm just going to wait till you show up and don't look like that and go, how do you like this picture, Matt?
Yeah.
I'm back. Strike one. The other one, where most of us fall down, is steps of delegation. So as you're growing a company, here's what you already should be knowing. Is you run out of hours in a day, days in a week, weeks in a month, months in a year.
Mm.
Every one of us have always done this. But what we do, unless we're trained right, is we don't delegate. We dump. We dump. And then we're thoroughly disappointed because you, Matt, disappointed me. I know I should have done this job myself. Give me that thing. I'll take it back. And everyone at your company knows you will. So they don't really do anything. And then they also know you'll never be happy. So why should I bother?
Right.
So there's the steps of delegation is in writing. Sound familiar to our conversation so far? In writing, we write down, here's what we want. Here's why we want it. Here's how much time you have. So let's use a month. We'll have a meeting schedule every week to talk about the progress, 4 meetings in that month. And then at the end of it, what does it look like when it's done right? And the last thing is what you, Matt, if you take on this project, get. What's good for you or what's bad for you? Now, maybe there's a $1,000 bonus one-time thing. Maybe it's your way to prove to me that as a senior tech, you should be able to go to my field supervisor training where you can run a crew inside this program. You may have to qualify by showing me you can get a project done. Mm-hmm. And learning the powers of steps of delegation is really a monster thing. So it's not a project, but it's probably the most important habit you will ever.
So let's make a bit of a segue into, or kind of what you've alluded to there with like goal specific, like targets and things for like both individuals within the company and then maybe individuals working towards a goal within a company. So I know I've spoken to people in the past and I've read a lot of this in books is where you basically got to help people, enable people to get what they want through helping the business, grow and get to a certain point. And so tying personal goals and helping them, establish personal goals in a structure like you've just alluded to there, making them achievable for the person and giving them a roadmap to get to them through your business, essentially. Because, there's that whole, I'm paraphrasing here, but if you help people get what you won't get what you want until you help people get what they want or something like that.
Yeah. I know that one. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Because Ellen's always tossing that out there. Yeah.
Right. So I'd love to hear.
The reality is in a contracting business, the box org chart that's part of the program, and it's also actually available on the Jumpstart guide. The boxes, I'm not talking about the one with the fancy titles, CIO, CFO, CEO, CTO, because that's not the boxes it takes to, and I don't care about your vice presidents. I care about a flat org chart. So everybody in your company, based on that org chart, should know 4 things. Where am I today? Where can I go tomorrow with your company? Mm-hmm. Who really is my boss? Because everybody here acts like they're my boss, especially the Levy family where there are 4 of us. And the last one is who could I go to for help? And so based on the box you occupy, there are in that operating manual is what is the performance that you need to provide. Now, as you move up to manager, yes, there are some things. So if I'm the marketing manager and I want 10 million in sales, I know how many calls a month I need to have, broken down to how many calls a week I need to have. I know my target audience, my marketing. So where are these calls coming from is all within the marketing manual. That
Right.
making sense to you? I don't like this stuff where it's detached. The boxes and the manuals really have it. So in the case of a technician, we're judging them on sales, operational, and technical efficiency, not one or the other, all three. Now, I know sales is a red flag for some people. When I talk about sales, I mean great communication.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to be a great communicator,
Yeah.
because what I learned as a tech the hard way is I was really good at fixing stuff and leaving people in the dark, and they were not happy. So was it my technical skill? No, it was not. Was I neat and clean? Yes, I was. But I never told them what I was doing and why, and they were left in the dark, not feeling satisfied.
Mhm.
So I had to get my own communication skills better before I could teach others how to do it. Now, what happened is my customer satisfaction rose tremendously, and right alongside of it was phenomenal sales in every position I myself occupied. But then I taught people how to do sales power, which is ethical sales.
Yeah.
My job is to come in, look at everything, and make good recommendations that are in your best interest, and also protect you from not making a bad decision today, because I learned that along the way as well. So
Yeah.
this is part of the thing you got to learn how to do. So again, if you're going to set the goal to 10 million, that's kind of it. I do want to spend one quick second, Matt, if I can, about why do people not want to set goals? Why don't they want to look at their goals?
Sure.
Here's the reason why, is because if you never write them down, you can never fail. I'm going to help you out.
Yeah.
That's your reason. If you never wrote it down, you can never fail. If you never show it to anybody, I mean, a trusted mentor, or even if somebody that a peer group, or even like in the case of Facebook, if you're willing to be open, there's no harm or foul to make sure you obviously not your competitors. But the point of it is that it's really helpful. One of my great clients way back, Tim Flynn in Boston, I asked him, we had started, he was like a $2 million company and had, high AR, accounts receivable.
Did you say Tim Finn?
Flynn, F-L-Y.
Oh, I was going to say, I think he's in a band. I think he's in a band we all know over this side of the world.
Sorry, Tim Flynn.
Right.
So Tim Flynn, I called him up like 2 years after we were working, and he had already gotten to about 6 million, and the AR was all gone. And I asked him, Tim, I said, Tim, what would you say is like the big thing that made a difference? He goes, being accountable to you.
Mm.
I said, what? He goes, I was always asking everybody in this office, in this place, to be accountable to me, but I was accountable to nobody. And they knew it and I knew it. And until I knew that, yes, I knew you were going to call me up. I knew you were going to check on my homework. I was going to make sure that I got my top 5 and that I'm making progress on it. And the next program is coming. So what are you doing? He said that was the driving force that really made a difference for him.
Is that something that, that's a confronting proposition for a lot of people, especially if you're a business owner and you're used to sort of, calling the shots per se, and all of a sudden you're like, well, now I've got to actually be accountable to either myself primarily, but then, maybe somebody else. I mean, that's where I suppose coaches are good, because they do sort of keep you accountable to a degree, try and keep you on track anyway.
Yes. It's a lot of, it was not me. One of my clients quoted the phrase. He goes, there's 2 ways to learn stuff. One is mistakes, and the second one is mentors. Mentors is a lot more pleasant.
Yeah, I think it's amazing though, when you're saying that, writing goals down is one thing. But for me, if I tell one person I'm going to try and do something, I'm doing it, because Sorry,
I almost did a spit take here, because it's so true. It is so true.
I'm not running that. I'm not sitting down having that conversation over a beer in a year's time, talking about the thing that I said I was going to do and I didn't do it for whatever reason that might have been, So I'd say
totally hear you. That's why, Alcoholics Anonymous, my case, Weight Watchers, which was where we had to sit down, and there was a scale in there, Matt, and I did not like to see that scale every week.
Sure.
But I don't care what it was. I was going to put my fat butt on that scale, and because otherwise I can't really make adjustments. And even in your own business, if you don't like the numbers, I get it. You would like to not look at your number, but how are you going to get better at it? So, I can only use football and basketball here in the States. Can you imagine playing three quarters of the game and not knowing what score it is?
Right.
Of course not. And, if you're doing Aussie rules football or anything else, you want to know the score. Otherwise, how do you catch up? How do you stay ahead? You don't know. So the numbers are your friend. They may not be friendly numbers, don't get me wrong. But the only way you could fix them is to know what they are. You got to know the key stats. Yeah. So getting to key stats, because people are like, oh, what are your things? I want to know a million stats from me. And I go, really, honestly, if I look at your company, I really only want to know 2 things. What is your top line sales and what's your gross profit?
Yeah.
Well, don't you want to know my net profit? They go, not really, not now. Because if you don't have the top line and you don't have the gross profit, not one or the other, no reason to look down because I can kill anybody's net profit. I'll just give you a raise. I'll take care of cutting your lawn.
Right.
Whatever else you want to kill your profit. That's not it. You have to have those key. Now, after that, you have to break it down into a whole bunch of buckets to be able to track.
That's interesting because you hear that it's not about turnover, it's what's left over, that whole, which I suppose in reality is true. Like at the end of the financial year, that's what you're really looking at. But yeah, that's a good point. I suppose, what's the business turning overall and how do you improve that so that you can refine? That's an interesting perspective.
Yep. It really does come down to the main thing because that would be reflected when you think about it roughly in your top 5. Because the top 5 is always revolving. So I want to kind of make sure before we run out of time is after you understand everything that we've gone through here, and now you should be thinking about, okay, so what's the master project list? It's all your projects and habits, this big top of the funnel. You boil it down to the top 30, which we always talk about is you have a strainer that has the biggest challenges or problems getting in your way, or the greatest opportunity to grow is the other filter. Now you get down to 30, and 30 would be is if I'm back the same time next year with Matt, and he and I have picked the top 30, my first question to him is, let's see your top 30. How many of these did you get done?
Right.
Because it's going to take a year to get the right 30 down. But here's the thing. No way, I don't care how big Matt's company is. It could be 100 million. You cannot work on 30 things at the same time and have any effectiveness. So we take the same strainers again, biggest challenge or problem, or the greatest chance to grow and be profitable. And we get down to the 5. Right. And one of the 5 is always going to be creating manuals, which is policies and procedures or standard operating procedures.
Yeah.
Because until you have that, you can't become a repeatable, systematic company. I've been out of my own company now, Matt, 21 years, and they're still humming along.
Right. And so with that in mind, I suppose without just to give everyone out there watching or listening a bit of perspective, what are some of the things that they what are some of the macro goals they should be looking at as a way to reverse engineer into, deliverables? So from a business point of view, you deal with trade businesses all over the place for many, many years. What are the main goals or the main, brackets that they should be focusing on? You've just mentioned manuals and procedures as one. What are the others? Turnover. GTR.
So like I said, when I come to a place, I'm looking for warehouse. I'm looking for staffing ratio. What is your staffing ratio? Which means for everybody who turns a screwdriver or a wrench, there should be twice as many of them as there are people who don't turn a wrench.
Sure.
And if you don't turn a wrench as an owner, you count. So that's a 2-to-1, which is a highly efficient company. I ever worked with anybody who's 2-to-1 that isn't making money.
Wow. That seems like a crazy ratio to me. So
this is not where you're doing construction where you send 40 guys to one site. We're talking about service and repair.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting.
So 2-to-1 is usually a very strong indicator as to being pretty good. Now you have to know what to charge. There's a lot of what ifs, right?
Right.
You're charging not enough money. I don't care if you had a staffing ratio of 10-to-1. Every job you run, you lose money. We're using some assumptions here. So that's why, if you really want to talk about where you should start, there is no wrong place to start, but Ellen starts you out with a budget because if you don't know what it takes to be in business. Now, I just do a really simple thing, not to replace real budgeting. Ellen has some very simple tools, ellenrohr.com, and Matt, go in there. It's really simple. She has a lot of great, even if you just bought her book.
She's got a great book.
Where did the money go?
Yeah.
The book is the first time I ever understood any of these darn accounting terms that they like to throw around because it's just a lot of gobbledygook that you don't really understand. And really, my dad also, at this point, he loved this book because it finally had something clear about, how do you construct a price? Not by calling it around and go, what do you charge and what do you charge? Even though, especially here in the States, it's illegal. But the other thing is, it's the wrong way to be in business. You need to know what it costs to be in business. So I do this 3-column budgeting, which is add up from your account everything it costs to be in business in 2020. Let's use a cleaner year, 2019, if you got to go back to that. And then in the middle column, add in everything you want to do this year. So you want manuals, you want training, you want to fix your warehouse finally, you want to add to go to a new kind of model stock truck. So every truck out there is exactly the same, which is what I did years ago. And it's a phenomenally big deal. And then the last column is what do you want in gross profit? Because the first 2 columns just get you to break even.
Right.
So now you have a better sense of how to structure your price. So that in budgeting, along with the lines of what you want for top line sales and gross profit, and break it down to what you need every month you're on a really good track now.
All right, cool. Well, what else? Is there anything else we need to discuss on the goal setting front?
Yeah, I think, let's talk about what's the worst case here. So you wrote down a goal. You did everything that we said about making it real. You shared it with people. It didn't turn out. There's no goal police coming to take your dog or your kid away. So you have nothing to lose. I mean it, really. You got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And, it's a line that's always used, shoot for the moon, you'll still go far. Well, it is true. If you pursue this goal, you break it up into actionable steps, and you use this master project top 30, top 5 idea and execute those steps, that will drive you towards your goal. So if it takes you 2 years instead of 1 year, is it still worth the journey? I would think so. And so that's why I want you to heavily invest. And I think what Matt has brought it really good here is if you can be accountable to yourself, then meeting with me. But here's the deal. I don't care how crazy your week is. I don't care how many jobs went wrong. I don't care about who quit or anything else in your life. If you pick the 5 projects and habit that's going to fix your biggest problem and challenge, your greatest chance to grow and be profitable, what do you have going on that's more important than that? And I'll help you out. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. So that's the commitment to yourself. Now, if you cannot commit to yourself, commit to your significant other, commit a mentor or a coach or a group or somebody.
Accountability partner.
Yes. Matt, I love the point where you brought home so strong today about the power of accountability and why it sometimes is the missing ingredient. I do believe in the belief stuff I talked about too. So hopefully when you listen to this or you come back to it and make sure you really grab hold of it. And I would invite you to do the exercise I was talking about. It is that powerful.
30 down to 5?
No, the one about where you write every bad message in your head.
Oh, right. And then light it on fire.
And then you write those same statements make it into a positive statement.
Yeah.
And shred it, destroy it, set it on fire, be safe.
Yeah.
Whatever you have to do to get rid of the bad and hang on to that good page.
Yeah.
I do have one thing that I do every year. It kind of sounds counter to this, but so I have to be clear. I write out a personal goal for myself every year on December 31st, and I do not look at it. I put it in my drawer of my desk, and I look at it December 31st next year, just to see for myself, did it get into my head? Was it in my belief system? Could I make it go? And I will say for now, for the last 3 years, every one of those came true.
Really?
Yes. Now, that's different than a meeting with me, because I do have my personal goals. I do have some other things in there, but there's like one big goal a year that I want to do.
So this is kind of, I suppose, counterintuitive to what we've been talking about, isn't it? Like revisiting them, having them front and center. So let's talk to that. This
is the one exception, and I was worried about bringing it up because I don't want you to hear a mixed message. But if you have one thing for yourself, personal, like I wanted to, at the end of, I know that people, when I tell this, I start to laugh. In December 2019, I was flying back from Alabama. I worked on a great job. Keith Pinkerton, a phenomenal electrician, already had 7 shops in 2 of our big states down there. We just took it to like incredible, and he's just blowing it away since then. But as I was coming home December 2019, I had worked with him and the famous Tommy Mello A1 Garage, which was another monster job. And I'm sitting in my very tiny seat with my wide butt, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? This might be a good place to leave my one-to-one consulting because I already had my stuff online. And I said, I think I'll be good with this. And then, of course, then 2020 comes, and it's like, oh, that's really good. I don't have to fly all the time.
So you're saying COVID's your fault?
COVID's my fault. Sorry, everybody out there. You can send me a text message, email, whatever you want, and go, Al, we hate your guts because you created COVID.
By the way, buy my course. So Al, I'm curious now, like, I suppose what we've been talking about does kind of tie into that conversation around like structure, frameworks, process, manuals, all this kind of stuff. I feel like we need to go a bit deeper, probably not in this recording, but I feel like we need to bring this full circle maybe with some, maybe another podcast around, maybe some of the leadership side of things, or some of the, getting the right manuals in the right place at the right time and giving people an understanding of, what that looks like. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts is that's really good because I don't want this to just be, it's one of those leadership things and where that was nice. We spent hour listening to some things. I'm all about action.
Yeah.
But, right action is what is the big thing, but the right action, the right way. And I do, we're going to do what we call in the business a tease. And so I'm going to tease you with, I would love to talk about solving your staffing problems for the first time in your entire life. Because that's what I did for myself all those years ago. So As we say, stay tuned.
Nice. You're legally that's all, folks.
You are coming up with a zero if you know that one.
All right, mate. Well, this has been great. And guys, I just want to say again, if you guys are interested in like the idea around having structure, systems, processes, manuals in your business, Al's got an amazing program. There's going to be some links to it on the show notes for this podcast, and you'll probably hear an ad either side of this podcast too, which is going to talk specifically to that. Guys, go and get it. It's like incredible value. We've had loads of people go through that operating manual program and absolutely love it. So I can't encourage it enough. It's worth its weight in gold. So I'll put some links to that. Just suck it up and get it done. And Al's got a special discount for all you site shedders out there as well. So you can't go wrong with that. Al, thank you very much for your time. I know you've got family to farewell and all this kind of stuff. So I'll let you, the frog and toad. Thanks again for your time, mate. It's been awesome.
Always great. Really appreciate the opportunity.
We'll come back to you guys with this cliffhanger where we're going to talk a little bit about solving your staffing problems. Folks, if you enjoyed this podcast, please do me a favor to go and share it with someone. I'm sure you pulled something from it. And I'd love to hear as well, if you see this come through across social media, let us know what your goals are or what's worked for you in goal setting in the past or what hasn't worked for you with goal setting in the past. I'd love to get your feedback on that. I'm sure, Al, you'd love to hear that as well. And now that
I tell you, I'm waiting for Matt to accept my admission into the Facebook group. I sent it to him. Everyone else has said, yes, please join our group. But no, Matt has me waiting at the door.
Well, Al, it's been a long time. And, now that you're new to Facebook, I thought, well, we may as well get used to being disappointed. So I'm just going to let you hang for a while.
I'm so crushed. Look at my face.
Yeah, that's it. That's great. So Ali's actually on Facebook now. News alert is great, and he's going to be in the SiteShed community. So I'll be able to tag him now in all these posts and comments that have always related to him, which until this point he's missed out on. Lesson learned. All right, well, that's been wrapped. So thank you very much, folks. Thank you very much, Al, and we'll look forward to chatting to you again in the future. Ciao.
Take care, everybody.
Guys, I hope this podcast has given you some confidence as to where your business can end up. If you want to remove yourself from daily operations and things that you know you shouldn't be doing in your business, or even if you just want to grow a business based on structure and a framework which is scalable, I cannot emphasize enough the amazing offer that Al Levy has put together in relation to his operating manuals program. Guys, go ahead and search if you're watching this, the link is right below. But if you're listening to this, once again, tradie.wiki/7power. It's tradie.wiki/7power. Go and check out the amazing deal he's got. I promise you will not regret it. It will save you so much time in trying to establish and learn these things yourself. My only criticism of this program is it's way too cheap. Go and get your hands on it. It will make the world of difference to your business. Trust me. Enjoy, guys. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to the siteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.